It was around the 48-hour mark of not sleeping that I finally decided I'd go to the hospital. And I remember in the emergency room that morning about 3 a.m., first question on my mind is not, what is this strange and sudden anxiety and panic that's taken me over and keeping me from sleep? First question on my mind is actually, am I going to make it back to my law firm by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and is anyone going to know what's happening? As it turns out, about 5 a.m. that morning, I finally write an email to my supervising partner and my assistant telling them I wouldn't be in, that I had some medical issues that night. And I left it at that, just real vague, because I didn't want them to know what was going on. The truth is, though, I did not know what was going on either. I had been seized by this uncontrollable anxiety, so much so that I couldn't sleep, and I had no idea why. A month later, I'd be a complete wreck, up in the middle of the night with wild fears, and unable to go to sleep without either a bottle of pills or a bottle of bourbon. So I'm introducing you here to the worst time in my life. But there is something else you should know about that time, and that is that I was then, and still am now, a devoted follower of Jesus. And the question that has haunted me ever since is how is it that so many otherwise sincere followers of Christ like myself nonetheless find themselves racked by anxiety? How is it that those of us who preach this gospel story of peace nonetheless find ourselves in our own personal stories of existential crisis? The answer that I have come to find has a lot more to do with habit than I ever suspected. So 10 years ago, I was a missionary in China. Until I felt the Lord actually calling me to go back to the U.S. and go to law school. And so I felt this missional call to be a lawyer. And I mean what I said actually literally. And I'm going to talk more about this if you want to hear more about this at a seminar tomorrow morning about how work is a missional call. But suffice it to say for now, I felt called to be a missionary within law and business. So I start law school with all the fervor of a man on a call. And my life becomes just like all the other top law school students. It was working for me. I graduated at the top of my class. I got my dream job in mergers and acquisitions at a highfalutin law firm in Richmond, Virginia. Richmond. It was great, except I look back and I think, the house of my life was decorated with all this Christian content of calling, and sincerely so, but the architecture of my habits looked exactly like everyone else's. My life had become a series of beeps and rings and dings and calendar alerts. I was always staying up later to do one more thing, waking up early to add something else, saying yes to everything, padding the resume, because that's what we all did. And of course, it was working great until I completely fell apart. And that's when I ended up in the hospital, like I told you about. And I wish I could tell you that it was an easy fix. It was a long, dark year. And I tried meds, I tried counseling, I tried everything. About a year into this, I'm sitting at a table with two of my best friends. And on the table is this program of daily and weekly habits. And there's a couple habits that my wife and I have sketched out to try to rein in my chaos. And y'all, it was a last-ditch effort. I had no faith in what we were doing. I was just trying to be a good boy and saying yes. There were little things I didn't think would matter. There were things like reading scripture before I checked my work email. There were things like having at least one communal meal a day, so that I just didn't live in this series of on-the-go eating and rush. There were things like actually taking a Sabbath from work. There were things like turning my phone off for 1 hour in the evening to be present. I did not think that any of this would matter because I had no idea how the smallest and most ordinary habits of our days and weeks actually impact our souls in the most extraordinary ways. My life began to completely change. And so I'm standing up here in front of you guys over 5 years later as somebody who still lives according to these silly little habits. Somebody who, as you see, went on to write a book about them. Maybe more importantly, as someone who slept like a baby last night. As someone who now is in the same job, but now with 4 boys, which complicates things. And yet the panic is gone. More important than any of this, I stand before you as somebody who found the bottom of the valley of darkness and found a man named Jesus that renewed me there. And now I've got a new call. You know what it is? It's to try to convince you and everybody else that your habits of phones, your habits of eating, your habits of work and rest and screens and technology, they are not neutral. They are changing who you are. They are formative and they matter. As you will hear throughout this weekend, as it turns out, everything matters, including these small mundane patterns. Now, I want to invite you to learn more about this. I would love for you to go check out my book and read about habits of technology. I would love for you to come to a seminar tomorrow afternoon I'm giving about how not to have a mental breakdown. And we'll talk about rhythms and habits and all this stuff. But more importantly, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to try it. I want to challenge you this weekend to try this out and put it to the test. I'm going to invite you to 2 habits to try this weekend. Number 1, I invite you to try scripture before phone. It's simple. It just means when you wake up in the morning while you're here, before you go to your phone, spend some time in scripture. Y'all are here in community. Do it together. Talk about it. Hold each other accountable. Another habit I want to invite you to try this weekend. Try turning your phone off while you're eating meals with people. Y'all are going to have a ton of meals this weekend with each other, and there's all this opportunity for conversation and friendship and growth and depth. Try turning your phone off. It actually, if you hold the side button for a really long time, seems like forever, your phone will finally ask you, are you having a medical emergency, or do you want to turn me off? You can actually turn it off. And I invite you to fall into friendship and presence and conversation. Now look, caveat, no judgment, all right? Some of y'all do this, some of you won't. Don't look at each other. Habits will never change God's love for you, but God's love for you should change your habits. So let me end with this. Y'all are going to learn a lot this weekend, and that's great. But I stand here as a testimony to tell you, your head can go that way while your habits go this way. And let me tell you, your heart will always follow your habits. So I encourage you, learn some great stuff this weekend, but also practice some formative habits. Because in that intersection of belief and practice, the heart comes alive. And I pray that this weekend you would learn great things and practice great habits, and that your heart would come alive for the love of God and neighbor. May it be so. Thank you all.